Hey, what's up, everybody? Pat here, grateful recovering alcoholic and addict. So tonight we're gonna start my actual my testimony, my story. Okay, so it's gonna be part one of, I imagine, a series. You'll see me going back and forth with my notebook here because I literally had to write stuff down. And even then, like, this is by no mean like a chronological order. It's more of a summary, right? As I couldn't tell you how many times I've been arrested. It's like 50 times. I don't remember a fraction of those. So anyway. Uh, let's get on with it, all right? First, please, guys, like, subscribe, share with anybody that this might be able to help, and thank you all for being here. I really appreciate all your support. So yeah, let's give this a shot, all right? And again, I want to preface this by saying this is by no means a sympathy story. This is what I've overcome, and I'm sharing this with you guys to let you guys know that there's absolutely nothing you can't overcome. If it gets a little ugly in here, remember it. I'm in a place now where I'm grateful for every moment of this existence because I've never imagined being so happy, right? But anyway, that being said. Okay, so, here we go. Even from a young age, I felt like I didn't fit in. I always felt like I was different than everybody else, right? And I think that's something you hear a lot in addiction, and I think that's very common for a lot. Never felt part of the group, and then, honestly, that made me feel less than in a lot of ways, okay? At one point, I had found out, one thing that was tough for me was, my father meant the best, right? But my father was an alcoholic, and he used to tell me all the time that I was half-assed, I didn't do anything right, what he left out of that was because I tested off the charts as a kid. I was, basically I was a gifted student, but I had no self confidence because it was never he never told me that part of it. He just told me that I don't apply myself and I don't do I don't put the effort in. I do everything half ass and from that I took that I was a piece of shit, right? And I'm talking we're talking 5, 6, 7 years old, and that sticks with you. So keep that in mind, guys. You got to this is where the seeds of limiting beliefs are started, and this is the stuff you got to heal today, and I have, but again, this is just trying to, commentary as we go, I guess. Yeah, so like I said, made me feel less than, never felt a part of anything, always felt separate from everybody else, right? And that's isolating, you know what I mean? And it's really hard to, have any kind of confidence. My parents had struggles. My father was an alcoholic. I didn't figure this out, and I don't think I've ever proven this, but I, finally put two and two together and figured out at some point my mother suffered from gambling addiction, right? And so there was always, we actually had a really happy home, from the outside, in a lot of ways we did. Like my brothers and sister and I were talking about our family vacations, and we had a lot of really, really good memories, right? So by no means am I sitting there trying to say I was in this horrible environment. I'm just telling you how I got to my addictions and the traumas that I had to deal with, all right? So, anyway, yeah, so my father, he suffered from alcoholism, and my mother was a closet gambling addict, and I didn't know that too much later. But my mother and I, growing up, were super close, right? And one thing with my mom is she also suffered from codependency and didn't necessarily get the attention that she needed from my father because my father, great guy that he was, amazing provider, hardworking. I mean, my father accomplished many, many amazing, great things in his life, but he suffered from alcoholism, same as addiction, and it's something that in the end ended up taking his life. And that's why I'm doing these videos. Another reason I'm doing these videos is so somebody else doesn't have to deal with that, right? So. One thing I didn't know then, but I know now, is I'm a very empathetic person, right? I got a lot of empathy. And all I knew is at the time I wanted to, protect my mother from, being sad and, whatever. And, it is what it is, whatever. Just, my mother and I were close, and I always wanted to, to try and, help her and, make her feel like she had a better life. Anyway, I don't even know where I was going with that. Let's see. Yeah, so I know where I was going with that. I remember one of my traumatic memories I had from 8 years old. And we're not going to get into many specifics here, but this was kind of a big one. I remember being 8 years old and my mother being really upset about my father's drinking and wanting to leave. And, here I'm at 8 years old. I had a couple of paper routes, had a little bit of money saved up, and I went and got like $200 that I had saved up and gave it to my mother. And I'm like, yeah, take the rest of the kids and go to Grammys. I'll stay here to deal with Dad because if nobody's here to make his drinks, he's not gonna let you go. Like that's something that's like I repressed most of my memories from childhood, but that's something that always stuck with me, right? And that's a tough thing to overcome, guys. So when you have traumas like that, that's the shit that I talk about that you got to heal, right? That's the only reason I bring it up, and it's probably one of the only specifics I'll really get into because I'm not trying to speak of my family like that, but yeah, that was one memory that really stayed with me, right? That was tough, and the outcome was she didn't end up leaving, and nothing got better, right? It was just dysfunctional family from that point. It only kind of got worse. So somewhere between 8 and 10, I ended up being my father's bartender. That was one of my chores is I had to make his drinks, right? So another trauma that I dealt with is I served my father every drink that he drank for the last 4 years of his life, and basically, I watched him, slowly poison himself to death because my father did die from alcoholism, right? And I didn't really acknowledge it at the time, but that was another major trauma, guys. I walked around with this guilt, thinking that feeling like I killed my father because I served him all the poison that he drank and that eventually took his life, and that's again, nothing I didn't deal with any of this shit at the time. It's just stuff that I had in my head that I was not, dealing with. And, yeah, it stuck with me. And that, stuff I'm dealing with now at 51 years old because that's the shit that I gotta heal and move on from, right? No kid should have to go through something like that. You know what I mean? And again, there's a lot of people that dealt with worse. But again, this is my story, and I'm just trying to tell you where my addiction issues stem from, the traumas that I've had to deal with. All right. Alright, let's see. Yeah, so, after my father died, it was really hard on my mother being in that house, and myself, and, there was 4 boys and my younger sister, and we were pretty wild. I know I was, right? I was already raising hell. I was already getting expelled, and I think my first day is freshman year at Tri-County. Halfway, I transferred halfway through the year. My first day, I was there 2 hours and I got caught smoking pot in the school. I didn't have my paperwork was even there. Like I literally set a record for the fastest expulsion or suspension. They ended up not expelling me, but they wanted to. And that's the shit that I put my parents through, right? On a regular basis. I was always getting in some kind of crazy trouble. So after Dad died, Mom couldn't take me in the house, so she took my little sister and she moved in with her boyfriend. But that basically left me and my brothers to fend for ourselves more or less, right? And again, we didn't necessarily see it as a I look at it now and like it's ridiculous, right? That's terrible. No kid should be raising themselves at that point. But for me, it was okay. Well, we can have parties, we can have friends over, and that's what we did. I mean, we always had one person over the age of 21 live in the house because we always made sure there was somebody that could go buy us alcohol, right? And yeah, I mean, it's it's what we were. We were on our own with no parents, no guidance, and yeah, that's crazy, right? So the chaos that came with that was out of control. It really was. It was definitely out of control. Yeah, I mean, never, not properly processing the emotions I felt from my father's passing. Just abandonment issues that I dealt with later on in life. Anyway, that's that. So yeah, that takes us to about 12, right? 14 maybe. At that point, I was smoking cigarettes and smoking weed. At that point, as a matter of fact, from the time I was 10 years old, I started working in a restaurant. I think the week before I turned 11 years old. And from that point on, I was smoking pot at 10, but from the time I started working at 11, I was a daily pot smoker, like literally round the clock. Weed smoker. Not that there's anything wrong with pot, but you shouldn't be smoking that much pot at 11 years old. I mean, it's as simple as that, right? And I remember I'd work all week so I could buy a bag of weed and have to make that bag of weed last all week, right? And I remember before my father passed away, a couple of times he's like, "Yeah, I want to see your savings account. I'm supposed to be putting money in the bank every week." And there wasn't a dime, and I'd have to go borrow money from somebody and put it in the bank. And this is 11, 12 years old. Come on, man. Really? Like, I was I was setting myself up for problems. And I didn't see any of this. I was just running amok. And then, after he died, it just got worse, right? Not long after he died, I was still working in a restaurant. I got a job working at a gas station in Milford. And started selling weed, right? As I was smoking more than I could afford to buy at that point, so I started selling weed. And I think I was like maybe 14, 15 years old by the time I started selling weed. And that's insane, right? That's insane. As a matter of fact, I remember at one point my one of my brothers was working for a catering company, and I think it was like somebody that was like an assistant DA that he was doing catering regularly catering parties for, and I had a neighbor who was running like a half-ass chop shop, and they both pulled me aside one week and said, "Hey, you got to cut the shit, man. You're about to get busted big time." And come to find out, the DEA was actually investigating me and had sent somebody into the gas station to buy weed from me. I'm 15 years old and I got a fucking DEA FBI file attachment on my record already. You'll wonder why I got in as much trouble as I did, right? But I didn't know any of this at the time. I was just a kid trying to find my way and thinking, thinking I knew what the fuck I was doing, and I absolutely didn't. I had no idea the trouble I was setting myself up for. These are things that I'm still dealing with today, and I mean legally and emotionally, right? So yeah, that the selling weed. Shortly, I think right around 15, 16, maybe 16 is when I started drinking. And from the moment I started drinking, guys, I was a blackout drinker. And honestly, I didn't know what that term was for a few years. I thought it was completely normal that anybody go have a couple of beers and have no recollection the last 3 hours of the night. I thought everybody felt that way. I didn't know it was different, but I had some sort of a, whatever chemical imbalance, but I didn't have to overdrink to the point, and I did usually overdrink when I drank, but I mean, I could have, 4 or 5 beers and still black out. It was just that's the way it was, and that's a dangerous situation. And anybody dealing with that, especially anybody young that happens to see this, if you black out when you drink, you got to stop drinking. Like you're setting yourself up for a long, long, hard road, and that's how people die, right? I don't mean yourself. That's how I am so incredibly fortunate, and I thank God every day that I never killed anybody during my drinking days because most nights that I drove home, I didn't remember driving home. I didn't drink every day, but every weekend certainly, and towards the end of high school every day. But yeah, so binge drinking, blackout, and then just with the wildness that came was I had a lot of anger at this point, guys. I'd been through a lot. I mean, 16, 17 years old, I'd been through a lot at this point, right? And not having anybody guiding me through school and teaching me to be a young man or be a proper teenager or whatever, right? I didn't know what to do. And I'm dealing with all this crap because I'm throwing parties at the house constantly, and I'm trying to project this image of this party animal, wild, crazy, happy kid, because inside I was hurting and I didn't know what the fuck to do. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know what to do, and that's what I know now. But I couldn't even process these thoughts back then, But I do remember going to friends' houses, and most of my friends' parents either hated me, or the few that didn't hate me felt really bad for me. Like, stay for dinner, or whatever. And when I was around, and sitting in somebody else's house as a teenager with no parents, and looking at feeling like you're sitting at the Cleaver's house, Leave It to Beaver. Yeah, those of you old enough to remember that. Was a few times that I'd realized, like, wow, I'm kind of getting screwed here, Otherwise, I think I had it made. Oh, we got the house to ourselves. We can party all we want. Yeah, there's nobody feeding you. There's nobody really clothing you, and there's nobody teaching you to be a proper fucking human being, But thought we had it made because we could throw parties, right? Well, the thing that happened, the thing that came next was, I grew up in a small town, Medway, Massachusetts, right? Really small town. You can't be as loud and obnoxious as I was in Medway and expect to get away with it. So that started with the getting arrested, and I honestly can't put a number on how many times I was arrested before I graduated high school. I do know I got my first OUI before I graduated high school. That was that's one that sticks out. But I also know my senior year I wasn't going to graduate high school because I had too many days absent, and I was able to come up with like 20 or 21 court slips to get excused absences. Not medical slips, guys, court slips. That's how many times I was arraigned or had to go back to court my senior year of high school, right? Come on, like, really? But I wasn't getting it. Nope. Wasn't a big deal to me, right? Didn't think anything of it, Nobody else I know had been arrested 17, 18, 19, 20 times their senior year. But for me, it was almost a weekend thing, or certainly every other weekend. I mean, that's problems, guys. Again, more traumas that I dealt with. Where are we here? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, guys. When you start getting in, and anybody young reading this, seeing this, you got to understand the long-term implications when you start doing stuff like that, guys. Because this is the start. And I was a kid. I didn't think any of this juvenile record, and I didn't know this was going to follow me. This stuff followed me, guys. All right. My first OUI before I graduated high school ended up costing me jail time, more than more than 10 times, right? For that matter. So anyway, just something to think about. It's you don't when you're in the throes of these things, you don't understand the repercussions of the damage you're doing yourself, the way the roadblocks you're putting on your own future, and that's what I didn't understand. All right, and from that point, literally, I don't, like I said recently, I don't think I've had a sense of security a day in my life, and up until the last few months, right? And that's a big reason why. And never mind just the getting arrested, right? But just all the pain and just not being able to process what I was feeling and knowing how to let it out properly. Like, I was wild. Like, I would go jump off a cliff, just whatever, acting out incredibly stupid things. I'd try to be the center of attention in these crazy ways because it would keep people away. So I would like do things like climb out the window of a car doing 80 miles an hour on the highway and sit in the windshield and then climb under the trunk of the car in front of it because obviously tandem vehicles going to the beach or whatever, and climb inside that car window, doing 80 on the highway, and hey, I want to smoke a joint with you guys, and it was just being stupid. Like, I don't know if I was trying to die, I don't know, but that's the thing. Everybody was telling me at that point, dude, there's no way you're gonna live to see 25, and you know what? I accepted that, right? I think about that. I had accepted that. So when I eventually did hit 25 and then 30, I had no idea. I had no plans for the future. I had never planned. I had never learned to be an adult. I'd never learned how to, grow up because I didn't plan on growing up. I didn't think I had a future because so many people told me I wasn't going to. Again, traumas that I'm dealing with now, and finally getting sober and deciding what I want out of life, and but these are like major things, guys. I mean, that's something that I dealt with, and it was really hard to figure out because I had no idea, and I never planned, and never learned, and I never thought, because again, I had been told that so many times, I honestly didn't think I was going to live to see 30, right? So, anyway. Okay, we'll go back. So back around 15, 16 is when I found acid mushrooms, and that was another thing, guys. I know we're kind of jumping back then, but that's how I laid it out. So, is what it is. Bear with me. All through those years, right, the amount of pain and just escape that I needed and I wanted from my day-to-day life, because I just didn't know what to think, what to do, because I didn't have really any, proper role models, guys, right? And I don't know why it affected me as much as it did, because, my brothers, I tried to be there for my younger brothers. My older brother is only a year older than I am, but he seemed, and again, he was pretty, I'm not going to bring my family into it, but he seemed to do a hell of a lot better than I did, right? But again, the addiction bug got me. And unfortunately not him or anybody else in the family, right? So, it's one thing to do recreational drugs, guys, but I did not do anything recreationally. I don't think I've ever taken a drink or a drug recreationally in my life, including smoking pot. I smoked more pot in a year at 14 years old than most potheads do in their life, right? It was insane. My brother and I were joking the other day, and he's like, "Dude, your bedroom was like Fast Time at Ridgemont High." For those of you who are old enough to, I'm dating myself here, but if you guys know the movie, you know what I'm talking about, right? But again, so most people, when they take acid mushrooms, they take a gram of mushrooms or a hit of acid. Where I'd take a quarter ounce or I'd take 10 hits of acid. I'm not saying it to brag. I'm telling you, this is what I was doing to myself, all right? And it's amazing I can put a coherent sentence together at this point, guys, because that's the way I take acid or mushrooms. I would take so much that I literally, if I could still talk or communicate in any form, I wasn't high enough. That's how badly I wanted to get out of my own head and out of my own skin. That's how badly I felt less than, or felt like I wasn't right, or didn't fit in, or wasn't part of, or didn't want to be seen, or I didn't want to have anybody reaching me. I mean, these are major, major red flags, but again, nope, didn't catch any of that, didn't see it, just thought I was just, I partied harder than most. That was what I told myself, right? And again, I did that so many times, guys, it's amazing that I'm, technically sane, and, anyway. But it was because I needed to escape reality, simple as that. I was trying to escape my reality, and you cannot escape reality, you have to fix reality. And that's the whole point of what I try to tell you guys all the time now, because I finally found that, and that's why I go at it the way I do, guys, because you can't escape from anything, right? The more you try to escape, the more it stacks against you. The more energy you're putting into fighting it, the more you're going to receive it, okay? just a little commentary as we go here. All right, where are we here? Let's see. Yeah, so despite all this madness, right? Somehow I actually managed to graduate high school, and with court slips and everything else. And I was actually accepted to the best, one of the top three auto and diesel mechanic schools in the country out in Cleveland, Ohio, Ohio Auto Diesel Technical School, right? And I was actually given a full scholarship, being that my father died when I was, sophomore year of high school, was pretty much guaranteed a scholarship. But I had actually graduated, and again, I don't like bringing these things up, guys, because I'm not trying to shit on anybody in my family, and I don't like putting that anybody else out there publicly. But again, these are things that I had to deal with, and the only reason I bring them up is just to give you an idea of my emotional state. And again, this is all to show you what you can overcome, guys. Okay? I was given a full-blown, full-ride scholarship to the college that I went to. It was a 2-year school out in Cleveland. I actually signed up for the early course, so I literally I started school 6 days after I graduated, okay? So I graduated high school, had an open OUI, I think I had cases in 3 different counties, 3 different court systems at that point when I left the school, right? But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get away. And it's the one thing I realized. I'm like, if I don't go to school, I'm really fucked here, because when I actually managed to graduate, I kind of brought it to light. And as a matter of fact, the night that I graduated, guys, I was out with my buddy of mine. We drank till 6 o'clock in the morning. I got to high school to graduate and had been partying so hard that I didn't realize you were supposed to wear decent clothes underneath the gown. So I showed up in a tank top and shorts, drunk as could be, and got sent home. And had to dig up some sort of dress codes to come back and graduate. I had to borrow some dress codes because I literally didn't have any. Yeah, you know what I mean? Just the madness of it all, guys. It's insane, right? But anyway, it's a lot of this stuff. I'm just, I'm going back over my head and just going, what the hell was I thinking, right? Anyway, so I managed to graduate. Heading out to Cleveland, Ohio for school, right? Guys, I jumped. I grabbed everything I owned. I threw it in an unregistered car with attached plates, no license, and 3 open cases in Massachusetts, including an OUI for a 17-year-old kid. My aunt threw a going away party for me, right? And her and my uncle gave me some tools, and everybody else, gift certificates. Actually cash at that point. There was none of this gift card shit, but and that was literally everything I had to my name because I didn't save anything up to go to school. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I was just doing everything by the seat of my pants, right? And it's amazing I managed to pull off as much shit as I did, but I was one determined son of a bitch, right? That's all it was. I was so afraid to fail at anything because that would bring to light the fact that I felt like I was a massive failure. So it gave me this amazing motivation to overcome any obstacle. And again, these are the gifts that I have that I didn't see as gifts back then. I just thought it was like, well, I have to do it because otherwise this is going to... I had to jump through so many hoops to get anything done. There's no way I could let something fail because if it did, the whole house of cards was going to come crashing down on me, right? So, I left the state with $600 in my pocket and an unregistered car with attached plates, no license, and nowhere to live when I got there. That's how I left for school, right? I was out there for like 4 or 5 days. I had a buddy of mine from Walpole that went out there with me. And we were living in our cars and trying to find apartments, not thinking that, not realizing that we're going to get out there and nobody's going to want to rent to a couple 17-year-old kids that don't have a checking account and I didn't have any family backing. I didn't have any money in anything. It was a joke, right? So the day before we started school, we actually managed to find an apartment on the Lower East Side of Cleveland, which was basically the ghetto, all right? I'm not a racist kid, but we stuck out. Let's put it that way. And that was in the middle of it was 1991 to 93. So Cleveland was experiencing the crack epidemic, and it was just nasty out there, people. When I tell you it was nasty, it was just bad, right? We never, the first year, we never received our mail because people in the neighborhood showed, a couple of college kids. And what it was is there was a machine shop that had an apartment out front. Let me explain this a little bit so you understand. And this guy, because he was an old Armenian guy, didn't want to rent, what he said called riffraff in the neighborhood, which, really kind of pisses me off because it's just, racism is all that was. So he kept these 2 apartments for just kids from the school, but the school wouldn't allow people going to school to go live there unless it was an extreme condition, and we literally had to go to school and like, listen, we can't go to your dorms because you guys charge way too much money. I can't afford it. And they very reluctantly gave us to leave this apartment because we were starting school on Monday, and it was, it was Friday, and we had nowhere to live at that point. So we moved in the apartment, and again, I met some people that I'm still friends with today. I actually end up really appreciating a lot of the people that were just, regular people struggling and trying to survive out there. But you did have the gang problems, you did have the shootings, you did have the crack, and the, all the crap that comes along with that, right? So it was a rough neighborhood. Anybody that came to visit me in the 2 years I was out there witnessed a shooting from my living room because it was a daily occurrence. But that was, that was the conditions I was putting myself in. Everything I did, I had to do under these ridiculously insane conditions because I didn't have anything proper, and I was trying to take something on sideways everywhere I go because I didn't have a license, didn't have a car, didn't have a family backing, didn't have this, didn't have that. So I get into school, right? I mean, we're going through hell and all this is going on. I get into school and I'm getting called down to the office every. I went to a military-based school, guys. It was 7 in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, two 15-minute breaks, time cards, uniforms. Your hair couldn't touch your collar. You had to be clean shaven unless you grew a beard, which is why I grew a beard. Um, and like literally, it was if you were late on a Monday or Friday, you're automatically expelled for the suspended for the week. Had to pay out of pocket the following week to go back and do double classes, and it was really a tough school. But again, this is where I found out that I do really well in structured environments, right? And that's kind of what I needed. I craved structure because I didn't have any for my whole life, pretty much, right? So again, my first 15-minute break during school, I'm getting called down to the office every day, and they're like, "Listen, you got a scholarship. You're 17 years old. Your parent has to sign it." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, well, my mother will sign it, no problem." Well, she wouldn't, right? And again, God bless your mom. I love you. I know you're going through hell at the time, but again, this was just reality of what it was, okay? And I think some of my family that probably, I don't know if they know this or not, and I'm sorry, particularly my sister, I'm sorry, but it's the truth, and I got to put it out here. So my mother worked at a restaurant that I had worked in. So I finally, I'm like, listen, just call this number. She's there right now. We'll get on the phone. I'll find out what's going on. Well, she didn't know that I was sitting in the office listening to this on speakerphone, right? My mother picks up the phone and says, "I don't want my son in that school. I'm not going to sign the fucking scholarship. Don't call me here again." And guys, my heart broke. Like literally, she has no idea that I heard that. To this day, I never spoke on it. I never called her out on it because it was such a hard thing. It's something I don't think we could ever overcome. And I had come to decide that my mother suffered from addiction like I did, and she deserved to be forgiven, and I did forgive her, and I had a relationship with her for the rest of her life, thank God, after the dark days, guys. We haven't got to the dark days yet. Well, I don't know if we'll get to them tonight, but anyway, that's a whole other episode, but you gotta stick around for that, because it gets good. You want to talk about suffering? Holy shit. Anyway, so what I ended up having to do was financially disown my mother, even though it was only a few months from being 18, but again, it is what it is, right? So I had to financially disown her and take out $40,000 in student loans to stay in school for a school that I had scholarship for. And I couldn't understand for the life of me why this was happening. Till about a month later, my aunt called me up and actually called the school, and they brought me down to the office to talk to my aunt. And I'm like, "Hey, what's up, Auntie?" And I'm like, what's going on?" She goes, "Oh, I just wanted to verify that you're actually in school, because when I asked your mother why she didn't show up at your graduation party, she said, 'Oh, I didn't come because he's not really going to school. He's got all these warrants and he's just running to escape.'" And that was my mother's way of saving face because she didn't show up at a cookout. Like, my future was being thrown away because somebody didn't show up at a cookout. Like, that's where I got my low sense of self-worth. And again, Mama, I love you. God bless you and rest your soul. But I say these things because, guys, these are traumas that I've had to deal with, and I didn't, okay? I couldn't. I just didn't have... I repressed them, and I didn't deal with them. But these are things that really messed with my head till this day, okay? So, that's where I had my low self-esteem, my low sense of self-worth. That's why I've been a workaholic and a drug addict my whole life, because I was trying to do something. When I worked hard and worked harder than anybody else, that's where I get my sense of self-worth, okay? And that's the only place I did. So yes, all right. So here I'm in this military-based school. Now I'm taking out loans, and I'm like, now the one thing that did do for me was I was bound and determined to make it to school. I got a job working full-time in a factory, and so basically I went to school from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., two 15-minute breaks. We had to punch out, so stand in line to punch out at 1 o'clock, so like 1:15 we get out of school. I got to get 40 blocks across the city to be punched into a factory. With a bunch of 50-year-old, people working in the factory and working full-time in this factory till midnight. And that's what I did every day Monday through Friday for 2 years. I was never late or absent from either place because I literally physically could not afford to. And I graduated in the top 5% of my class. I think it was like second out of 160 people, right? That's an amazing, amazing accomplishment. And I was actually incredibly proud. And it was like the first time in my life that I got, oh, well, okay, I can do anything, right? I was actually blown, especially my roommate, like, who are you? This is not the kid I went to high school with. Like, if I got one question wrong in a test, I was beating myself up over it because I was bound and determined because I was so pissed off at that point. And not only that, but then I didn't have any room for error. Like if I missed work, I couldn't afford to pay my rent. If I missed school, I had to go back and I'd have to miss work and I'd have to pay out. I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't afford it. I had no support. I put myself through school, and the neighborhood was, it didn't make it any easier, guys. Because keep in mind, we were still drinking. We didn't drink during the week, but we partied pretty goddamn hard on the weekends, right? And I'd run around the streets of Cleveland, and I had this big crazy beard, and I was 17, 18 years old, and I'm buying alcohol because I looked like I was 25 at 17, 18, right? Because I hadn't had an easy day. I was not aging well at that point already. But I did manage to, despite all the crap. I mean, I could spend 2 hours talking about just the stories of college and the shit that I went through. But I'll bring up one. Towards the end of it, my college roommate ended up marrying a girl out there, so he was staying out there. We weren't married yet, but they were dating. He was going to stick around to be with her. And he was getting ready to move in with her. We only had a couple months left of school. So we let the phone go, and I just used a payphone. But it was Thanksgiving, and I went to call my brother Brian and wish him a happy Thanksgiving. And a couple young gangbangers came up and they're like, yo, give me the phone. At this point, I've been out there, just about 2 years. And I'm like, I just was sick of getting, pushed around with these gangsters. And so here I got my brass knuckles and a knife in my pocket. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stand my ground, right? And I got a 9mm gun stuck literally in my forehead. And had to, put my hands back in my pocket and back away thinking I'm about to get shot in the face. Because literally, guys, life had no meaning to these people out there. I watched people get shot daily out there. That was a trauma. It was the first time I thought I was legitimately actually going to die on the spot, right? And my poor brother, I hung up the phone and walked away. I didn't think to call him back to the next day because I was so worked up. I won't tell you, I actually went back to the, we were pretty heavily armed at the apartment because, again, it was a really bad neighborhood. And they saw a couple naive young white college kids, and they just, they thought we would be easy victims. And they very quickly learned that we were a bunch of crazy hillbillies who would sit around, get drunk, and use a shotgun to blow out the streetlights just to keep people away from the apartment. But they'd come steal our mail, we're gone, but they pretty much left us alone in the apartment. I went over and grabbed the 30-30, and I was going to try and shoot the phone out of the kid's hand, off the side of his face. And I'm not that good a shot. Actually, I really am, but it probably wouldn't have been the best idea. Thank God my roommate decided it wasn't the best move and took the rifle out of my hands, right? But that's the shit I put myself through. But yet, despite all that, I did manage to graduate, second out of 160 people, a massive accomplishment, right? Well, again, I graduate and I come home and actually my aunt and my grandmother had gone to the courts and actually took my transcript to school and proven that I did as well as I did and gone to the courts that I had problems with and actually gotten all my warrants forgiven, which was amazing. To this day, my Auntie Janet, thank you so much for that. That was an amazing blessing. And Marie, Ma, as I call her, my grandmother, rest her soul, God rest her soul. Amazing for them to do that. But I wasn't back for like 3 weeks, and the same cop that arrested me, I don't even know, 20 some odd times during high school. I was driving through Medway, and as a matter of fact, I'd gone to a party. I was working in a dealership. I graduated, taught my class, got a fantastic job at a BMW dealership as a flat rate mechanic, and but I'm driving through Medway, and the guy runs my plate, and he's like, oh my God, Kelly's back, right? So he pulls me over. Now, I'd actually left the party 8 o'clock at night after having literally 2 beers over the course of like 3 hours. But again, nope, you're under 21. That's an OUI. Come in, blow a breathalyzer. I blew like a .002, right? Not a .008, .002. But again, that was an OUI. Here I am 3 weeks out of college, and I got my second OUI. Like, you're kidding me, right? Here we go again. Lost a license. After all the shit that I'd gone through, I'd just gotten home from college and got my license because all my warrants had been forgiven and everything else, right? But again, here I am again, and I want to blame that cop so bad. To this day, I'd really like to have a conversation with him, but that's not, at the same time, I have to take accountability. Technically, I was underage. It was an OUI. He's absolutely right. As mad as I was, and as much as it may not have been fair, and but it doesn't matter at the same time. I allowed it to happen. I put myself in that position, okay? So, and it wasn't, God, I think it was 6 months later. So my idea to deal with that was I'd park my car in Millis and drive home from Norwood, park my car at a restaurant on the Medway Millis line, and then hitchhike through Medway so the cops didn't think I was driving. Like that was my big solution to losing my license. And you wonder why my problems continued and just got worse and worse and worse, right? But yeah, let's see. So that was eventually, I ended up just deciding I couldn't keep doing that, so I moved to Norwood, so at least I wouldn't have to drive back and forth because I think I was having problems with my car. And again, not unregistered. I don't think I ever had a registered car because I never had a license to this day. All right, I mean, I'm 51 years old, and I still don't have a license from things that stemmed from the 1990s. It's a long time, right? Most of a lot of people, a lot of people I was just in rehab with. We are talking about. I'm like, I haven't had a license longer than most of these kids have been alive, right? That's sad, right? I'm just finally getting to the point now where I'm eligible for it because I continued this whole thing just continued to snowball and snowball, and yeah. So you know what? I think maybe that's a good point to stop. We're getting up on 36 minutes long here, so we'll go. Yeah, all right. We'll call this part one of the series, and we'll pick this up tomorrow. But guys, again, this is not a sob story. I'm grateful for every minute that I've survived because of where this story ends up. But I do want to get my story out there. And again, this is all so people understand there's nothing you can't come back from. And this has been probably not your average story of somebody growing up. But guys, we haven't got to the dark days yet. So come back tomorrow to get to hear some really interesting shit. But as always, guys, the point of this is I love my life today. God has given me a second chance like no other. I feel amazing. My health is coming back. I'm going to the gym. I feel good. I'm set. Literally, I feel like I'm aging backwards because 2 months ago I looked 10 years older than I do right now, right? And I still may be aging rougher than most, but you know what? I'm coming back, guys. I feel good. I feel sharp. I'm incredibly grateful. My head's finally clear enough that I was actually able to write this down. And again, I'm skipping a lot of specifics, being just giving you generalizations because it would just be insane. I may just have to write a book one of these days. But again, my point being, guys, there's nothing you can't come back from. Positivity is everything. You gotta want better. You gotta want better, do better, get better, right? But anyway, we're back tomorrow for another one, guys. Remember, God loves you. I love you. I appreciate anybody sticking around to hear this story, and I hope we get this to somebody that'll actually make a difference in life and show them they can actually come back from anything. But that's it for today. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Again, God loves you. I love you. Be safe, guys. Get into a program, please.